Okay, timeline, part 2, whizzing straight on from the end of the treaty, see how far we can get, about 15 minutes on this one. So, 1919, in August, the Weimar Constitution was adopted in Germany. They got met back in February and had to go to Weimar. That's why it's called the Weimar Constitution, because Berlin wasn't safe, but the Constitution itself was only officially adopted for how the country was going to be run in August 1919. Make sure that you guys can know the weaknesses about the Weimar Constitution. Supposedly there are some strengths, but certainly it didn't help the Weimar government going forward. Make sure you know the structure, how it was set up. Get lots of 4-mark questions on the nature of the Weimar Constitution, Article 48, all of that lot. We're not going into the detail right now. In September, that's when you get the second of the treaties after the Paris Peace Conference is being signed. That is the Treaty of Saint-Germain, as I'm sure all of you know. It was with Austria. Same sorts of punishments that the Germans were having to deal with. Austrian military was limited to 30,000 men. The empire was carved up, split between Austria and Hungary. The new country of Czechoslovakia is formed out of their territory. Most of their industry goes to Czechoslovakia, which impoverishes Austria, and they end up never actually paying any reparations in the end. That's in September. The Italians were hoping for a lot of land from the break of the Austrian Empire because they signed the Treaty of London in 1915. And the Allies basically brought them into the war on their side. They didn't get that land, and the Italians, by way of showing their dissatisfaction with Versailles, they took a port in Yugoslavia called Fiume. Good statistic, you've got to be able to show dissatisfaction with the treaty on behalf of the Italians. Go a little bit further, down into November. Third treaty is signed. This one is the Treaty of Neuilly, and you all know that that is with Bulgaria. Make sure that you guys have got 4 facts, minimum 4 points about each one of these treaties. So if you get a 4-mark question, you know the name of the treaty, who it was signed with, the date it was signed. For example, you give the fact the Bulgarian army were limited to 20,000 men in this treaty, and make sure you know that for all of the treaties, at least 4 facts so you can unleash 4 out of 4 on a question like that. Over in Germany at this time, there's a particular character you might be familiar with. Comes to be a major player, his name's Adolf. He joined what was going to be the Nazi Party. It was called the German Workers' Party in November 1919. Originally, it basically working undercover for the army, but ended up embracing the ideas. He was member number 55, although a tiny party. Although to make themselves seem bigger, they actually put him down as member number 555 on his card to make themselves look like a much bigger party than they were. Very small party, but he soon finds he has a talent there for writing propaganda, for shaping messages for the party, ends up rising up the ranks, and we'll see that as we go through from the 1920s. So in fact, we'll move on from that year yet to 1920. In January 1920, the first 26 articles of all of the treaties were known as the Covenant, and that was how the League of Nations was going to run. There's its first meeting in Geneva. The peacekeeping force that's going to save the world. The brainchild, the idealist Woodrow Wilson, but of course America are not there, following that policy of isolationism. And Wilson is unable. He tries again in March to try to get the American Senate to ratify the Treaty of Versailles, and again his plan is defeated. The US Senate refused to join the League, and what you guys need to know about the League of Nations is all sorts of stuff that we can't really put on the timeline. You must understand the structure, the names of all the organisations. You must know stuff about the ILO and the Secretariat. You can easily get a 4-mark question on those. You must know how it works, how the council is structured, the powers they have, what the Assembly does, what the functions of the Assembly were. You must know about all the commissions of the League of Nations as well, and the different problems they set out to tackle. You must know about the different aims of the League of Nations and what they were trying to do. You must know who the key players who were members were and who the key players who weren't members were as well. You must know all that stuff. We haven't got time to go into it right now. There's a huge amount of the league that doesn't fit onto the timeline there. So that's the early 1920. They get a very early challenge in 1920. That's when the Poles took the capital of modern-day Lithuania, and Lithuania at the time as well. Vilna in 1920, and the League proves powerless to stop them. It's the first disaster, maybe a bit strong, but the first failure on the books of the League, and they were desperate to keep Poland happy, because Poland were the country that was supposed to be keeping Germany in check on their eastern border, so they basically let the Poles get away with that. Where else are we? Okay, okay, well, let's move on to this side before we go any further. In February, over on the German side of things, February 1920, this is when Adolf Hitler, now becoming more and more a key player all the time in the German Workers' Party. He helped draft, he didn't do it himself, but he helped draft the German Workers' Party programme. It's a great page in your book that lists a number of those aims, where he talks about Gross Deutschland, he talks about only citizens that are pure of German blood can be citizens of the nation, he talks about wanting the Lebensraum. Make sure you know the key aims of the Nazi Party. You must be clear on that one. The party was also renamed in 1920. You should know it was named the National Socialist Deutsches Arbeiters Party, which becomes the Nazi Party. And also this year, as Hitler is taking more and more influence, he designs or he embellishes a symbol that's been around for many, many years, the swastika, and that becomes adopted as the Nazi Party emblem in 1920. Key event though, or a couple of key events coming up, in 1920, in March, in Germany, showing the dissatisfaction with the treaty. The Freikorps had been growing, lots of former army soldiers had been demobilised, and the government were told by the Allies, or the League for example, they had to disband those Freikorps because they were getting over 100,000 men. And Wolfgang Kapp led that push basically to try to overturn Versailles, because the Freikorps didn't fancy being told they couldn't exist anymore. Make sure you know why it's launched. Make sure you're able to tell me about the events that happened, and the general strike, and the government fleeing to Dresden, and make sure you can explain why it failed as well. Easily get a 6-mark question on that. Key event in 1920 on that side of the course. Come over to the international relations side. We go to June. We have another treaty here. This one, that's the Treaty of Trianon with Hungary. If you're hungry, try another one. Easy way to remember that one. Again, make sure you give me 4 facts about that one. Particularly it's to do with the territory carved up, and that Hungary lose it in all sorts of different directions, to Poland and Romania and places like that. In August, you've got a particularly harsh treaty. That's the Treaty of Sèvres, signed with the Ottoman Empire that becomes Turkey, and the empire is carved up with huge chunks of land going to the British in the Middle East, such as Iraq, such as Palestine, Transjordan. They're limited to an army of 50,000 men, having been one of the great powers of Europe for the last 200 or 300 years. Another humiliating treaty. They create the country of Armenia, for example. There's a good page in your book on this, in the book of the Red Spine, the new Ben Welsh one. Leads to an Armenian genocide in the 1920s, about 22, that Lee tried to get involved with. The Turks to this day deny they had anything to do with. I have seen a 6-mark question on the impact of the Treaty of Sèvres and why it was so harsh and what happened afterwards. That is a stinker of a question. Make sure you know some stuff on that. And you should know that, like with all the Turkish banknotes with all the statues, hero of Gallipoli, a guy called Mustafa Kemal, set up a new government, overthrew the Sultan because they were so unhappy. Overthrew the Sultan to get rid of the Treaty of Sèvres. They will get another treaty a couple of years down the line. That's 1920. Moving swiftly on. Don't forget, you guys can pause it at any time. 1921. This is when Hitler found what's supposed to be really a private army for the Nazi. The SA could get a great 4-mark question on the SA. The Sturmabteilung, the brown shirt. What was the purpose? About protecting Nazi speakers, beating up, intimidating communists in the streets. Those tactics of violence and intimidation that the Nazis used for so long, and how important the SA were in their initial years of the Nazi rise to power. Also in 21, in January, you had the report of the Reparations Committee. It's reparations, make sure you spell it correctly. Or the Reparations Commission, you should call them. Finally set the bill. It took them 2 years to work out how much the Germans owed the rest of Europe. And this one's going to be controversial. Mr. Davis, in his retirement, is going to be squirming when I say this. We don't want this 6.6 billion nonsense. We want 6,600 million as the bill to be paid in yearly instalments to last until the 1980s in goods and in cash. And that first reparations payment is met. Probably a good one to write across the middle of the board, this one actually. First payment. Net, that was a payment of 50 million. In 1921, lots and lots of debates about how fair the reparations were. You should have some good statistics in your notes already about that. That's going to be the only payment they beat, the only part of the punishment. There are other things going on in 21. Europe is shifting. You've got fallout of the treaty in March. You've got a vote in Upper Silesia to decide which country they're going to be a part of. Are they going to be Polish? Are they going to be German? You should all know that's called a plebiscite. There are other plebiscites. The most famous one is the Saar. That takes place in 1935. Split vote between the Poles and the Germans, and so the League of Nations steps in, splits it up. Actually, a compromise that tends to go down fairly well over what could have been a tricky issue. Probably the key one you want to learn from the League of Nations' point of view in 1921. Everyone's favourite holiday destination. The dispute over the islands. Lots of people get this one confused. It's given to Finland. Finland get it. And the Swedes said, yeah, okay, that's all right, you guys can have it. Finland got the islands and Sweden accepted. And it just goes to show that when the League of Nations, with their theory of collective security, when people cooperated, it worked. When it didn't cooperate, it wasn't going to work. But this is a good example in the early years, 1921, how a crisis comes up. Could have led to a minor war between two minor powers, but it was solved. One more thing probably to note in 1921 is the Washington Naval Conference. major powers of the world, or major naval powers of the world, got together and agreed it's not really disarmament.